Hello, and welcome to another teaching from TorahFamily.org. We are a family-based ministry that believes the whole Bible stands forever, that all of it is based in the Torah, and all of it promotes the Torah. Please visit us at TorahFamily.org for more teachings like this one. We hope this teaching helps you learn and grow in the faith. We know that in pursuing Torah, our life truly does become set apart. As you find yourself wanting to observe the Sabbath, the feasts of Yahweh, and eating clean, you can start seeing that it also affects those closest to you. So what happens when your understanding of what pleases Yah leads you to grow in Torah, and your husband's understanding does not? There are many dynamics that play a part of one's marriage, and it can become a very sensitive matter concerning the lifestyle changes you're wanting. It can also become very volatile when your spouse is resistant to those desires of change. Now, if you are in an abusive relationship with your husband, then please seek counsel. The scriptures I want to share in this teaching can help address situations you may have. However, abusive situations brings up totally different dynamics that will need to be addressed with each personal situation. Again, if you are in an abusive relationship, please seek counsel. This message is directed for women who are choosing to follow Torah, yet now find themselves struggling in their marriage because of that choice. Becoming unequally yoked in marriage can be very trying and sometimes very lonely. For me personally, it was my husband that first started down the path to pursue Torah. So from the start, I had the support and leadership of my husband. For others, I know it is much more difficult. I admire the strength and perseverance it takes to walk down this path alone. With all the problems that can arise, there are still many different circumstances in every marriage. One answer doesn't always fit all, and the attitude presented in applying any solution can make or break a situation. I'm not going to talk so much about our husbands. I want to talk about us. Let's examine ourselves first. How are we showing our love for the ways of Yah to our loved ones? How is the passion we have coming across to our husband? Is it with kindness and humility, or are we judgmental and condescending? When one has a passion for something, they usually want to go at it full force. It could be on a broad spectrum, covering things from crocheting to physical fitness. If you have a love that is a bit over the top for something, then you can say you are passionate about it. I remember when I tried putting running into my lifestyle. A friend introduced me to a running program called the Couch to 5K. It grabbed my attention because I knew I was already qualified to start. I had the couch skills down really good. Well, I became passionate very quickly for running. I was so determined to succeed that I even went out and bought the coolest running outfit with socks to match, spending more than just a little bit. Our resources are usually the first thing affected when we have passion, but not just our finances. It also affects our time, energy, and most of all, our focus. Despite my cute outfit and great focus, I never made it to my first race. I ended up with a hairline fracture. Why? Because I had a pain while running one day and I didn't submit to it. In fact, I ignored it. It continued to get worse, but I was stubborn and ran until the pain was so great that I couldn't even walk without crutches for 6 weeks. We need to keep our marriage from needing those crutches. The passion I had for running was not a bad thing. It was like the passion you may have for running the spiritual race set before you. Learning Torah and how it applies to our lives today, and seeing how it fits all the pieces of an amazing puzzle together, scripturally is exciting. Just don't ignore any pain that may surface because of it. If your husband is not walking in covenant with Yahweh, then you need to walk in wisdom. Colossians 4:5. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Your husband is likened to an outsider. Make the most of every opportunity, but be graceful about it. Nobody likes to be called out and made to feel small. We have the power to hurt or to help with the tongue. As you know, men and women are made up differently. Besides the physical, there are a number of things that affects us in a different manner. For instance, being lost. Men do not ask for directions where a woman would stop at the first gas station she sees. It's true. Of course, it's just generally speaking, but there is a reason these cliches are out there. Because we are so different, it can be difficult to align our desires in life up nice and neat with our spouse. Steve and I are opposite in every way. It is a great compliment to one another, but it brings struggles too, especially when one of us wants the other to see our point of view better. Our common ground is Yah's word. So how much more difficult is it for a marriage without that solid foundation to stay afloat? Think of what happens when two oxen that are unequal in stature are yoked together to plow a field. Both oxen will struggle with keeping in sync with one another. Everything they do will take more effort and more time to get the work accomplished. It is a challenge for them to get the job done. In the same way, there are many challenges you may be faced with today because of being unequally yoked like those oxen. Whether you have been on this path for years or just starting out, I think we need to understand that our walk with Yahweh is more than just eating clean and observing the holy days. It is also how we build or tear down our relationships and the covenants we have made with one another. Often, believers start looking for a way out of their marriage because it is so difficult. It can become very frustrating to have the desire and longing to walk out the ways of Yah, but feel pulled back every time you try. It's hard not having the encouragement and support you so desperately desire and need from your husband. We understand how easily it is to become weary. I want to encourage you to press on by looking at what the scriptures have to say. I pray it will give you solid ground to continue your walk with our Heavenly Father. Let's start with Paul speaking to the believers in Corinth. 1 Corinthians 7. To the married I give this charge, not I but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband, and the husband should not divorce his wife. There are a few different viewpoints concerning the first part of verse 11. We are not going to expound on those views at this time. What I want to focus here is the charge given to not separate. The wife is to remain with her husband, and the husband should not divorce his wife. In the next several verses, he continues on, but states that he is only giving his opinion. To the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Let's think about Paul's opinion here. Paul would not have been a stranger to seeing conflict in marriages as he preached to the Gentile nations. I am sure that many men and women alike were divided in accepting the truth and good news that he was sharing. Maybe it was because he saw so much conflict in this area that he felt compelled to write this very part of the letter. Knowing his training and understanding during the time of Yeshua, I think his words are valuable counsel. Paul goes on and writes to remain as you are, when you were called. Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the churches. In the following verses, he includes different aspects in life. The main point he gives is found in verse 24. So, brothers, in whatever condition each was called, there let him remain with God. Glorify Yah where we are at. I pray we do not give up on our marriages. If we don't try because it feels too hard, then what makes us any different than the world? How is that pleasing to Yahweh? Many may disagree, but you have to ask yourself, have I done all that I can do? Let's look for ways to bring glory to Yahweh out of our challenging circumstances. As Paul taught for the believing spouse to remain with the unbeliever, you will find that Peter did as well. He touched on it in 1 Peter 3. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Respect is probably the core element that nourishes and keeps a marriage healthy, not only in our marriages, but in most all relationships, such as in the workplace or friendships. 1 Peter 2. Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. For this is a gracious thing when mindful of God. One endures sorrows while suffering unjustly. All too often these words from Peter are looked over too quickly, yet they are powerful words and can truly speak to most any difficult circumstance. Here is a question that is frequently asked. How do I live with and love my husband who is constantly opposing my convictions and doesn't respect my beliefs? We will cover that in a little bit. Let's first look at how he may be feeling. Your convictions alone may cause him to feel that you think less of him now, even if you have not intentionally tried to. It happens naturally. This is where the struggle of being unequally yoked comes in. It's not an easy task to make sure your husband still feels respected while you are trying to stay true to your convictions. One subtle way that often makes a spouse feel no longer respected is the time and energy a wife spends with others. There are many believers today who are distancing themselves from their husbands while seeking support and love from others of like-minded faith. In your intentions of living for and seeking Yah, this is one of the ways neglect comes in. The marriage covenant is to be tended to always. As I neglected to tend to my leg, so many others are neglecting to keep their marriage a priority. Examine how you place others' needs before His. Look at how your actions reflect the importance of who He is versus everyone else who you spend time with. This includes those within the body of believers. The highest priority of your daily life should not be on relationships with people in your congregation, pastor, or even your children. Your number one commitment and intentional actions should be to honor your husband. That's right, your husband. His actions of loving you is going to be based on how he loves himself. What if your lack of respect is causing him to think less of himself? If his growing lack of confidence as a husband dwindles, then how is that going to factor in with loving you as he loves himself? Please think about that. Part of our role as a wife is to show that respect and submission to our husband. Yahweh can use it to work in his heart, and you will grow closer because of it. Your husband will not even be able to start supporting you in your convictions if you can't show him respect of who he is. He needs you to show him your love and admiration. We can't forget that we are charged with living in a manner that shines as lights in the world. Titus 2, to be self-controlled, pure, working at home, kind and submissive to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be reviled. That brings us back to the question asked earlier. How can we live with someone who is constantly opposing our convictions? One of the biggest struggles is finding the balance of submitting to your husband while at the same time not compromising your own walk with Yah. There are many problems you have to work out. There is the struggle of keeping Shabbat when your husband wants to go out and do things on Saturdays. Eating clean is hard when he desires you to make his favorite meal of pork steaks or another food unclean to eat. This, of course, leads to the question, can I still use my dishes because unclean foods have touched them? Let's clear that up right now. Leviticus chapter 11 gives us the animals that we may eat and those we may not. It also gives instructions to wash any object that the dead unclean animal comes in contact with. Those objects need to be washed and are considered unclean until evening, including a person. But all earthenware vessels along with the oven and stove are to be broken and thrown away. Now don't go and throw your stove out. The ovens and stoves of ancient times were made of clay, brick, earth, or stone. I think it is safe to say that our stoves and ovens today do not fit that category. They are not made of porous materials. Now, there are many different types of dishes, so you will need to evaluate what you have in your own home. You can certainly have something other than earthenware or stoneware to eat from. Now, becoming unclean by cooking the meals for your husband does not mean you are in sin. Being unclean means you are in a state that is unworthy to enter the temple or partake of the food offerings. Yah gives us grace and provision to become clean again at evening. His grace is threaded throughout the Torah, and this is one more example. To read up about being unclean because of the unclean meats and that of the articles those meats have touched, please read Leviticus 11, 24 through 36. Some are not struggling with their husbands and unclean foods, but with the traditional holidays. Christmas seems to be the hardest. How can someone not celebrate it when the family is putting up decor and then the family gathering is at their house? Not only are the holidays hard to avoid, but Shabbat and the rest of Yah's holy days are hard to observe. These are all very good questions, and there is not one easy answer. Like I said earlier, there is not a one answer that fits all because every marriage has different dynamics that make up the situation. You have to understand that just because you are faced with these problems, it does not mean that the life your husband chooses will keep you from living a life pleasing to Yah. As an unbeliever, he may still have you cook meals that are considered unclean. He may want you to go somewhere on the Sabbath or feast days that keeps you from setting them apart. You can please Yahweh by honoring your husband. Respect him. Show him love and do not chastise him for it. Let's look at the first marriage that Yah created, all the way back to Adam and Eve. To understand ourselves better as women and the role we live out with our husband, we need to look at the curse Yahweh spoke to Eve. Now, we all know that Eve takes a bad rap for the whole eating the forbidden fruit, but we women know that Adam was not innocent either. Genesis 3. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. The last part of this verse reads, Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. In Hebrew, it reads, Toward husband desire, and he rule. Then in parentheses, there are three different words that could be inserted. They are in, at, or with. Some have discussed how this verse may have the meaning that your desire for your husband is actually your desire to rule towards your husband. I think it is also plausible that it may read, husband rules with. The husband and wife ruling together does not mean a lack of order. Ruling with can simply be as the two being charged to run the household together, sharing in the many different responsibilities. 1 Corinthians 11 and Ephesians 5 give a wonderful example of ruling with one another, but still honoring our spouse with his role as husband, the head of the home. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Messiah is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Messiah, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her. 1 Corinthians 11. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Messiah, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Messiah is God. The world's view distorts submitting in a very crude way. Yahweh's view of submission is one that gives order, protection, and is placed there to present us as blameless. Wives, your submission to your husband lovingly shows your submission to Yahweh. Yah knows your heart and the longing you have to keep his instructions. As you teach your young children the ways of Yahweh without bringing disrespect to their father, pray for his help. Ask him for wisdom and guidance in the things you do. Continue in steadfast prayer for your husband's heart to be won over by your respectful and pure actions. Concerning our children, we can look at Timothy as our example. Paul writes to him in 2 Timothy, I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now, I am sure, dwells in you as well. His mother taught him the ways of Yahweh, though his father was not an Israelite. Her faith was honorable to mention, yet she did not have Timothy circumcised as instructed in Torah. Acts 16. Paul went to Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. I have to imagine that there were other things in their lives that Torah was not followed either. I'm sure it's not hard to have a meatless meal once in a while as you feed your husband his pork, but I know it is very heartbreaking to feed the unclean food to your children. Be encouraged knowing how Timothy turned out. You, as a believer, are vital to your family. As stated earlier, the unbelieving spouse is made holy through the believer, and therefore the children are also. Paul writes in Ephesians concerning marriage, And the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. I believe as we strive to honor Yahweh by honoring our husband, that we will be a light that shines to all who are around us. I pray the light we shine tells the message of Yahweh. Our light is a witness of his love for all. Let's try and show the world Yah's love on this journey we're on by keeping Philippians 2:14 in mind. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. In all of this, I want to close with you some powerful words of encouragement that was given to us not too long ago. Words from a woman whose husband is not a believer. One thing that the Father is teaching me is that it is not our place to try and persuade and convince others to believe in what we do. Instead, we are to be a light by setting the example through our conduct, obedience, and acts by our faith. Yah calls who he will. It is those whom he calls that we are to disciple. We are never to try and force anyone to see the things that our eyes have been opened to. To try and do this would be like trying to explain to a blind man what the sky looks like. Yah must open their eyes first. Then we are commissioned to feed his sheep. The family can often be our most difficult areas of testing, but if we persevere, we will grow stronger. Even though it can often be a struggle, I am thankful every day for the family that I have, knowing that there are families in my community that are living in death and darkness. My greatest desire is to pull them out of that place. May Yah teach me how to shine my light to them. Stay strong. Let his light shine through you like never before. I hope you have been blessed by this teaching. Now it's up to you to be a Berean and study it for yourself. That's the only way to grow. Until next time, Shalom.